Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to GEBC's Conscious Book Club. We are focusing on chapters 6 and 7 today. The chapters 6 is about the mind and the ego, and chapter 7 is about the power of will. And as you know, this is all part of Kelly Larsen's amazing book called Keys to Unlocking Your Inner Power. So let's get started, gang, and chapter 6 and 7. Well, after going through that minefield of chapters 4 and 5, we come to chapter 6 and 7. Well, from my perspective, this was a little less dense, but I don't know about you all. How did you enjoy reading chapter 6 and 7?
It was an easier read for me personally. I got a lot of understanding, and I understood a lot, and I still had to research a couple of or define it, look up a couple of words, but other than that, I really related to it.
Okay, what about you, Freddie?
It was an eye-opener for me. It was, self-actualization. I had a lot of that going on in chapters 6 and 7.
Oh, that's good. That's real good. What about you, Miss Shelley?
I really liked chapter 6. I think so far it might be one of my favorite chapters because the way she broke down the levels of the mind, consciousness, and ego and everything. There were some things that I had not heard before, so that was a good thing.
Okay.
Introduced to me.
So today let's kind of get into it and let's talk about those levels of mind that she talks about. And I really think that this will help everybody understand, chapter 6 particularly, will help everybody understand what it means when someone asks you, who are you?
Yeah.
Because you are bigger than what you have been told. As I like to say, you are more than the story you've been told. And so let's break into some of this. Let's kind of follow the flow of the book in chapter 6 and talk about the primordial self. I think that's the beginning, obviously, here. And so let's talk about that, the primordial self. Now, I'm going to read from the book. It says, although the path of the soul is guided by an amazing construct, it is guided by an even more original form of self, one that has never left the splendor of the body of the source. This form is called the primordial self. Okay? And although there's a great power contained within the soul, it contains only a minuscule fraction of the awareness and power contained within the primordial self. Now when you hear that, what does that bring to mind when you hear that, there are parts of your soul that do not even contain the greater parts of self. And we're talking now about the primordial self. And then you go and say that connecting with the primordial self is not an easy task. And then the whole idea that because the massive amounts of awareness and power contained in the primordial self, the source developed a series of step-down processes that allows the soul and its incarnations to interact with, absorb this energy. And so here we begin to understand what the word emanation began. Is that really there's only, the way I look at it, there's only one self. And that is the God self, if you will. And in the process of God making itself known and experiencing itself, we have these step-down processes till we get down to the bunch of individuals called us. And we are all connected. Everybody's connected, but we don't experience that. We experience separation.
Yeah.
As Freddie, as Florence, as Shelley, as me. And yet, we are connected to an even greater awareness, and we begin with the primordial self, And therefore, we move from that, and we begin to address the mind, the divine ego, and the ego. And then she moves into the levels of mind. Now, when she talked about mind, did any of y'all, was that, did any of you begin to think, or did you start off thinking that the brain and the mind were the same?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. You want to expand on that?
I mean, I think most people do. I think most people, you know, they don't think of the brain and the mind being two separate entities. I think most people feel like, you know, all your thoughts, perceptions, your evaluations all come from
Brain.
the brain.
Right.
So
Right.
to hear that the mind is something different altogether,
Yeah.
like I said, it's an eye opener.
Yeah.
You know, it's something new.
And that there are different levels of even mind. You know, you like. Let's break that down. Anybody want to talk about that? The different levels of mind. You know, we talk about the divine mind. I mean,
The higher mind and the lower mind.
and the lower mind. Go ahead. Let's talk about the higher mind right now.
So then the higher mind is broken down. So see,
Right.
that's the thing that I liked about this chapter was that, you know, it gave you these different levels, and then you can go, if you read the book and you go and you find out these levels, you can go and you can see kind of where you are and say, oh, you know, I keep having these experiences and it's showing me that that's a development of this part of myself. You know, that's what it did for me. And so in the higher mind broke down then into the consciousness at the highest level,
Consciousness. Yeah.
beingness, intellect, form.
Okay. Okay. Let's kind of go into that because the mind. How can I put this? The mind is like, you know, it is like a how can I look at it? It's like a subset or like an interface. That's what I'm saying. It's an interface that allows really God and his many emanations to interact with one another. And when you begin to deal with mind, you begin to deal with somehow or another there is this type of separation that begins to occur. So you can have experience. Because if everything is all one, you know, and it is, then how do you know yourself unless you differentiate yourself? And then the process of that has to have a means by which you can collect information about the self, and therefore the mind comes into play. And so let's talk about the higher mind, as Shelley has already introduced. Consciousness, you know, is the highest level of mind, comprised of primordial energy. Consciousness receives energy directly from the source. Now, for me, when I read that, I don't know how y'all felt about that. When I read that, and it particularly talks about the celestial scripts, you know, that are associated with consciousness. Each person, deep within each person, is a copy of these celestial scripts. Now, when I hear the word celestial, I think of heaven. When I think of the word script, I think of word. So, and it is in direct connection with source. Think of source, think of the all, God. And it reminds me of a passage in the Bible that says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So that means there's something running, we may call it spiritual DNA or something. There's something in us that is operating even beyond at our level, our awareness. It's consciousness. It's consciousness. You know. And then she goes into being. Did anybody want to say anything about that? Beingness, rather.
Well, I wanted to say just a little bit more on the mind and levels of consciousness. What helped me to understand it a little more was the sentence that says the mind stimulates activity within the brain. So, not the physical. Let's see. No, the mind stimulates activity within the brain.
Right.
So the mind is using the brain to translate thought. So I kind of read those two sentences, you know, over and over because as we read, I still kind of get a little confused. So I would have to go back to that saying the mind stimulates the brain. So the mind is using the brain to help you understand.
Right. Your brain is a receiver and a transmitter for you to operate in this world.
Yeah.
Okay, it operates in this dimension, and yet, and also let you understand that, I mean, if your brain can actually not fully grasp all the information that is coming to it. So there are levels of mind.
Yeah.
So starting from the lowest level, you got your conscious mind, you got your
Yeah.
subconscious or your preconscious mind, your subconscious mind, your cathartic mind. That's all part of what we call the lower mind. Then we move on up. You have what we say, form, intellect, beingness, consciousness. So these are the higher levels, and so you have more going on within you that your brain can actually even pick up.
And I think to piggyback off of what Flo was saying, you know, about the brain and the mind, getting into that aspect of it is one of the things that you have to develop that I think some people ignore in their quest for divinity or consciousness or whatever, is intellect.
Yeah.
Because if you don't first know how to comprehend, then you're not going to be able to move up to a certain level, you know.
Okay.
And I think that is something that comes into play when people start talking about they don't like to read and they don't like to study, but for you to be able to understand some concepts, for you to get that trigger to me in your mind that okay, I'm ready to go to the next level, you're gonna have to start studying and searching, and that's something that'll come to play. We can talk about when we get to ego, but you know.
But one thing at the intellect, the highest level, is that I think in terms of what you just said, Shelley, in terms of getting comprehensive understanding through books and through conversations, at this level, there's a sense of knowing that you ever had that experience whereby you kind of wonder, how do I know that?
Yeah.
There's a knowingness that we have that's beyond being taught or beyond reading something.
Right.
There's a knowingness, and I think the biggest thing that I think that Kelly's trying to tell us is that you are dealing with information and energy that is coming to you all the time, and your ability to receive it is what is critical to your understanding. A lot of times people learn through, we learn through like revelation. Things just kind of just come to you. And you have to be open to learning in that way, through dreams, through visions, to pay attention to that small, still voice. And that's what you're right, Shelley. That's when we're going to get back to the ego, because it speaks loud, and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing I like in here is the word beingness. Now this took a little time for me to kind of grasp, and we're going to speed up the conversation though. But ways in which we take in information, first of all, there's a pure potential that, technically speaking, you already know. You have knowledge that is with you all the time. You're actually unlearning from the lower level, so you can actually receive the knowledge that you already have. But at the beingness level, you ever heard of this thing called archetypes? You ever heard of archetypes? Okay, well, you ever wonder why certain movies appeal to you, why certain stories appeal to you and everything? Well, those stories represent archetypes: the hero archetype, the victim archetype. There's so many storylines. The superwoman archetype. Yeah. All these archetypes, but where do they exist? And why is it that one appeals to me at my level than another? That goes back to beingness. These are like primordial roles or relationships that we're all connected to, that we actually become one or the other in the process of incarnating into this life. So, I mean, that's enough about that. But I just I'm like Shelley. I like the way that she breaks it down. We'll take a little time to go back through it to understand higher mind, lower mind, levels of mind. And these are the higher levels of mind that we have to, that information is dropping down from the highest level from source, through consciousness, through beingness, through intellect, to form. Now we drop into the chthonic mind, and it's like a dividing between the higher mind and the lower mind. The chthonic mind, where nightmares and dreams, information coming through that way, and then we drop into to get into some real good stuff, the unconscious mind, and then we drop into the subconscious mind. Okay, and what's unique about that? Anybody want to talk about that? The subconscious mind. These are like storage compartments. That's what I'm looking for. Mine is like compartments, that store information and energy. Go ahead, Shirley.
The subconscious mind, Kelly describes it as, in life, it has the function of running the physical body during the process of incarnation. And it stores memories during a particular lifetime. And the most important of these memories are fixed within the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind being responsible for personality, emotions, and the mental cognition of each individual. So I think the subconscious mind, when you think about each incarnation that you have, is kind of that personality, that difference from life to life, as you go on.
But the difference is from the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind
follows you from life to life.
The unconscious mind.
Right.
The unconscious mind stores everything.
Right.
Okay. And the conscious mind stores the memories of this life.
Right.
Is that right?
The subconscious.
The subconscious
mind
stores the mind of this life.
Right.
Now, I've heard Dr. Gibson say that when you end this life, that is wiped clean, which is the reason why people don't necessarily walk around with the memories of a previous life in this life.
Yeah.
Okay. However, it is stored in the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be more accurate for people, instead of people saying, I guess subconsciously I was such and such, or subconsciously maybe that's why I was feeling. Maybe they should be saying maybe
unconsciously.
Yeah.
Right.
And people think unconsciously is something bad.
Yeah.
Right. It depends on what right, which is why definitions of this is why what your point was about understanding these words in their definitional form is very important.
Right, when you have an understanding of what you're going through, of what's going on, you can feel all day. You can, they go hand in hand. You can feel all day and experience all day, but if you don't know what you're feeling and experiencing, then you just kind of floating around. Whereas if you actually, and then on the other side of that, you can know all day and read all day, but if you never do anything or have an experience, then you don't know what's going on. You just read a book, so they go hand in hand. Right,
and then again, you have things like you have things like people who are clairaudient and clairsentient, and where you actually begin to pick up information, sounds, that you're hearing things, or you have a sense of feeling things, and things like that. This stuff is coming from a certain region of your understanding, or of your compartments, your unconscious mind. It's all stored there. So the ability to be able to take energy and information that's actually stored in a compartment of your mind to become conscious of it that's a practice.
It is. And I mean it changes, it redefines even a person that's on the path of consciousness. It redefines what consciousness means. For me personally, I'll say for me personally, because it's bigger than what I even what I even imagined it to be.
Because, you know, people many times think that if they experience an event, you know, like see something or feel something or think something, that, you know, because we're not aware that there are parts of us that are bigger than just our brain
Right.
or our immediate mind, they think that maybe I'm going crazy. Or maybe, you know, what's going on? Why am I hearing these things? Why am I feeling these things? Is because we are all connected to a bigger part of ourselves.
Right.
And that information, in a weird way, is trying to filter itself through a little small little wire called our brain.
Right.
or our conscious mind
Right.
connected to our brain.
Right.
And, you know, you just don't know what's going on. But this really helps to understand that, okay, I know where this is coming from. Now I got to figure out what it means.
Right.
You know. But I like this point she says here in terms of subconscious. The energy of enlightenment seldom reaches this level of mind, the subconscious mind. And when it does, it creates profound changes in the consciousness and stimulates enhanced dream recall, telepathic communications with higher beings, empathic abilities, and clairvoyance. Okay, so you wonder, how is a person able to, you know, see things before they happen? How are people able to communicate? You know, you can communicate, or shall I say, telepathically, or you can sense something is about to happen before it happens. Again, you have, it's like a lens opens up, you know, and information just go through, and it gets into that mind of yours where you are aware of most, and then you begin to say, I feel something. I feel something's not right. I feel like something's about to happen, you know. And in a world that doesn't respect this level of mind and understanding, what they do is that they'll turn around and say, oh, that's not real. That's not. You just imagining things. Yes, you are imagining things, but imagination is what? Real.
It sure is. Talked about that today.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about the pre-conscious mind.
Okay. And
Going to the conscious mind. We can let's skip the pre-conscious. We're going to the conscious mind if you want to, because this is where many of us are.
right. And the conscious. Well, I guess the thing that Kelly talks about with the conscious and pre-conscious minds, because like you just read, most people's enlightenment doesn't reach the subconscious mind level. It reaches the pre-conscious and conscious mind.
That means that
That's
people
where
are so out of tune with themselves.
Well, I like this paragraph that she has in here. All levels of the mind exist within all of the soul's incarnations in varying proportions. So you have some level of pre-conscious that's online. You may have a little bit more of the pre-conscious mind that is online, where you're able to have these experiences and see these little flashes and things. And then a smaller level maybe in this incarnation of your conscious mind, where you're able to start having the experiences of enlightenment with your aura and gnosis and all those types of things, and little blips of the subconscious where you may have a vision or a visitation with a higher being. But in the next incarnation, then your subconscious experiences may become greater. And that's the hope. That's the thing, that with each incarnation you expand and you grow. And each part of that mind.
What about those
grows.
flashes you were talking about?
Oh, with the pre-conscious, with the pre-conscious mind, it was something that I found interesting when she was describing the pre-conscious mind. She said that when the energy of enlightenment reaches this level of the mind, the initiate begins to see flashes of light when the eyes are closed. They have lucid visionary experiences when their eyes are open or closed. And it was just something that I picked up on, because when I was little, like all the time, whenever I would close my eyes, I would like see lights and flashes and shapes and stuff. And for a while I thought it was because I can't see. I thought that was, I thought it had something to do with that. But really, my understanding of it actually changed as I started to study and grow, because it became something that was, for me, peaceful and expected. And I got used to the idea that when I would close my eyes, I would always see something, you know.
You know, one of the things that I want to get y'all to respond to realize that, really, as we said before, this is the oneness experiencing itself as many. And so what that means is, think about what that means. It means that everything that you are and everything that you are feeling is God. Even your worst day is God. Because that's God's experiencing itself at the lowest level of your existence.
Let's take that segue to move into the ego.
Okay. That's good. I think it's great.
Because again, Kelly broke everything down into not only the ego, but the divine ego. And that part explains what you just said. The divine ego first urges you to find the path back to the Creator. And this is what a lot of us are going through right now. A lot of our friends on Facebook and who we talk to on YouTube, I know it provides subtle, gentle promptings to find books, seminars, movies, teachers, those people who come into your life. That's the divine ego.
Now,
you know,
let's read the definition put out by the master teacher, Dr. Gibson, of what is the divine ego. Anybody want to do that? Are you there?
The divine ego is the part of us that knows we are God.
Now think about that. See, like I said, there's a part of you that does not know, that's not aware of that, but the part of you that does resonate with that, that's the divine ego. That's the divine I.
right. And so I think that's when people all the time want to feel like, well, I don't want my ego to get involved, and they don't want to have an ego. But there is a level of your ego that is supposed to feel superior, that is supposed that recognizes that you are more, and that it's okay.
That's the big self. That's the big you, the big I. There's a big I, there's a little I. You know, and sometimes the little I wants to act like the big I.
Right.
You know, and so that's the divine ego. It's that part of you that know that you're God. Now, all of it is God.
Right.
But there's a part that is that is, I guess, pushing you. That's pushing you to want to be, I guess, at the lowest point of the divine ego experience. It is pushing you it is pushing itself to know itself.
Right.
And you feel that as what? As this urge, this divine urge to, like you said, to want to reach for higher information, to go to some seminar, to have a deep divine conversation.
Right. And I want to say again, you know, the ego, again, redefines the ego for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, consciousness was redefined. Like I said, it was an eye-opener for me, these two chapters, because, you know, people say, you know, check your ego at the door, check your egos, and, you know, what does check your ego mean for you now? You know,
which ego you're talking about.
it depends on which ego you're talking about.
Right.
There are different levels, and to know that your ego can be used as a tool
Right.
for higher enlightenment, you know, again, it's an eye-opener for me.
So in other words, there's a part of you that knows that I am more than what my parents named me.
Right.
There's a part of you that knows I'm more than a Baptist or a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or black. There's a part of you that knows that you are beyond that.
Right.
That you are beyond that. And it is pushing you to become aware of it.
Right.
Now, it has competition.
Right. On the other side of that, it has the ego that wants you to stay focused on.
What kind of ego?
The ego. That's what she just described
right.
as the
Not
ego.
the divine.
Not the divine ego,
Right.
The ego.
Just the ego.
Your
the little self. The
your
little you.
human ego.
Me.
that blocks the ability to see who
Yeah,
and what
what
you
you
really
really
are,
are.
and keeps you focused on this reality.
Why
So
does it do that?
It's that wants you to say, oh well,
I'm just Shelley.
I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go. I'm not gonna go to this class today because I can go to work and make some extra money. Because all it wants you to do is stay here.
Yeah.
Well, like you said,
I can stay at home and not go to church.
I'm just
Right.
Shelley. I'm just
Yeah.
Fred. I'm just Flo. I'm
Right.
just this employee. You know.
I'm not important,
Right.
or
This
I
is-
am too important.
I am important. I'm
Yeah.
important. I'm so important that I don't need to do anything else.
Right.
It's
Right,
enough.
right,
I'm good.
right.
And I'm perfect, just like I am. You can't improve upon it. Let me just
Let
sit
me ask you
here.
this: how do you know when your divine ego is speaking versus your non-divine ego is speaking?
That's what I'm. You know.
That's what you want to know.
That's what I want to know. I want to know that because reading this, I try to adopt new things and apply it to my life and to read about these different levels of ego and to know that I have an ego and always had an ego. Like you said, which one is the divine and which one is?
How do you discern?
It's
How do you
different.
discern? How do you discern when it is the God ego or divine ego in you that is leading and speaking and talking to you, or you're hearing that versus the little ego, the little Freddie, the little Florence, Richard, and Shelley? How do you know that? How do you know that? How would you determine that?
Well,
What y'all
until
think?
you said that, I was thinking negativity versus positivity.
Okay.
You kind of basically what everybody was saying. When your ego, your little self says, "I can't do that because I'm not good enough."
Okay,
But
I
your
like that.
divine ego is your positivity. That, like I was saying about this was a little challenging for me, but as I researched, I understood more. I think that's your divine ego. That's how I understand it.
Okay. Joe, you got an idea?
I think that one thing that Kelly talks about is that the ego can be like Freddie said, pointed out, a tool. It can be
The little ego.
yeah, the little ego can be beneficial. It can be something that is pushing you forward. It's just that you have to get to a point where you recognize this is my little ego saying this, but why is it saying it? It's telling me that I can't do this, so that I'll say yes I can and move further.
Right. That's good.
Or
Very good.
it's telling me it's bringing attention to the fact that I get angry in these types of situations, so I'll know to improve upon that, or to recognize that, to learn what brings up these emotions so that I can grow from it. That's what the ego does. It puts you in a situation where you have to recognize something about your lower self.
One of the ways in which I think that you can discern between your big mind versus your little mind, or say your divine ego versus your ego, human ego, is the loudness of the voice. The divine ego speaks with a small, still voice. It's not loud, boisterous, and it's not condemnatory. Its motivation is divine, as it says. When you deal with the human ego, it really is about control and power. It wants to be in control. It's like, you may even say, that's Satan in you. That's your inner Satan, your inner devil.
The part of self, the part of the ego.
It's condemnatory.
That wants to prove itself.
Wants to prove itself because it's not sure of itself, or it's overly sure of itself, as Shelley would say. But it's loud. It's loud.
Right.
And you hear it very loudly in your head, and because it's trying to protect itself. The divine ego has no fear.
Right.
It has no fear. It has power. It's that small, still voice. It's confident, sure. It lets you know you're okay. I got you. The little ego is insecure. And I think that it opposes that which is loving, that which is true, that which is godly in you. It opposes it. It's about self. I think another indication between the divine ego and the human ego is that the divine ego doesn't feel separation. It doesn't feel alienated. It doesn't feel like an alien in the body. The little ego senses more separation and anxiety about itself in relationship to others in life. So I think that those are some things to kind of recognize, because you have sometimes, it's an important thing, because if you're not familiar with these concepts and you got to live them, your question is, well, how do I know when, it's not me being arrogant that is saying, I am God, like you're trying to convince yourself about something that you're not really sure about.
Right. And I think that's a good point, before we move on to the wheel, that if you have to convince yourself of something, or you feel the need to try to convince somebody else,
Right.
then that's probably you. That's probably not not your divine ego, because your divine ego is willing to walk away. It doesn't need, to convince. It doesn't need to convince someone else, like Reverend Bullard was saying. It can survive whether you convinced or whether the next person is convinced of it. It can still keep going and move forward. It doesn't, because eventually, and I'll put it in this example. I think I had an experience where I received a message, and the message was not for me. It was for someone else. And in my lower self, when I told that person that, I could have said, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to listen to me? And if you're not going to listen to me, then I could have felt, bad. And like, you think I don't know what I'm talking about and all this kind of, I know what I'm talking about. Listen to me. But my divine ego had already taken over that whole situation. I didn't need to be a part of it. It wasn't about me. And so I was able to step back and say,
and just sit
it down and say, this is not for me. This is for you. And you do with it what you need, and let it go.
How did it turn out?
Hey, I don't know. We'll see. No, that person ended up then having to have their own experience with their own, because again, it was a message for another person. So then they had to have their own experience to be able to receive that as well. And that's stuff that goes beyond us.
I want to connect something that you said earlier. About the ego as an opponent, the little ego as an opponent, or the little ego as an ally. And obviously we know very clearly that the little ego will oppose out of fear anything the divine ego says, and it's trying to move to do. But as an ally, if I understood you correctly, Stella, what you were saying is that we can use the resistance that we feel when we tap into the little self, the little you, the little ego, as an indication that, okay, I need to go against this, and use that as a force to move us toward higher levels of being. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay. Now, I say all that to say this. In the book, Kelly gives a definition of the process of enlightenment, and this is going to jumpstart us into the power wheel. It says, in essence, the process of enlightenment is the gradual unfolding of the latent ability of the physical body to process and utilize primordial particles of energy from higher realms of reality. So, in other words, what it's telling us, enlightenment is the process of, as the higher mind descends into, it's a slow process, descends into the lower mind, into the conscious mind. Now, you are now beginning to experience the process of enlightenment because you are one with your higher self. Now, the question comes, how do you kickstart the process of growing up, of becoming one with yourself? How do you kickstart that? How do you make that process of enlightenment gradual and slow as it is? How do you begin to take on more awareness of the bigger part of you? And this is where the power of will, or the force of will, and the activity of willpower, choice, free will, comes into play.
Right.
Now this takes us from a lot of theory and of this, and it's the theory mixed in with obviously fact, and the practice of being able to make that decision. It's like for me, there's a line that you have to cross when you make up your mind. Because I think a lot of times people, we talk about enlightenment, we talk about spiritual growth and consciousness and everything, but until you make
Practice of it.
a choice, until you express your will, your divine will, until you make up your mind. I like the way Tony Robbins say, at the moment of decision, your destiny is shaped. Nothing is more powerful than a made-up mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Choose you this day. You got to make a choice. You got to stop dilly-dallying between, am I or am I not?
Yeah.
And something happens in your process of growing up or spiritual growth when the force of will is activated by willpower. And you start making, like you said, practice. You start really making a commitment to practice what I am, who I am. You guys agree with that?
Oh yes, absolutely, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What is significant about this chapter 7 that makes chapter 6 possible? Let me get that right quick. They get you out of the monkey mind, having all these thoughts going on, and I'm not sure, and oh man, what is this? I like the statement that Dr. Gibson says, the will is a divine aspect of human thought which is dominant within each of us. As a divine power, it is without limits. You see, I think this is important because at some point in time when you begin to strip off the layers of limitation on yourself, because see, a lot of times that's what the ego does to keep you small, to keep you believing this is the only world possible. This is the only reality possible. The reality of possibility is unlimited. I mean, man, really, we talk about this stuff in church all the time.
Yeah.
The infinite possibilities stemming from your primordial self. You have infinite possibilities. Spontaneous healings, resurrection, raising from the dead, miracles, all these things are possible. Okay? If you use the force of will and make the choice to move in the direction, to begin to expand your horizon, your awareness. I like what she said, will is the divine aspect of human thought.
Yeah.
As a man thinks, so is he.
Right. But like you said, the thing about this chapter is it gets into the fact that I think will and willpower, when people hear those words, they think of it as something that it just happens, but it's something that you actually have to do.
How bad do you want it? That's the question. I think about how bad do you want it?
Right.
How bad do you really want to know the fullness of yourself? How bad? How bad is it? How? In other words, what's the level of intensity? And I like this phrase here. Now, let's just work with this. The only limit. You see what I'm reading now? The only limit to the power of will is your imagination. Now, what does that mean to you when you hear that? The only limit to the power to the power of will is your imagination.
I would think that, that means that you have to, think it, believe it, do it, put it into action, and there are no limitations because there are no limitations
what is it that keeps people from exploring, the full potential of God in them?
Because they think they can't do it.
What convinces them?
Their mind, their ego comes in and says, you can't. It hadn't been done before. Don't even think about it. You're not ready. You're not old enough. You're not wealthy enough.
Talking about doubt. What, fear?
The ego, yeah. The lower ego, yeah.
You see what keep people grounded? What keep people grounded? There's a book that corresponds with what Kelly's saying called Power versus Force. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that it talks about really is that the dividing line between the more force you have to use to get things done versus the more power that you innately have, where things become a lot easier and become a lot smoother to make it happen. It comes from the power of your internal being, is the realm or the emotion of courage, which relates to kind of like the force of will.
Or willpower, where she says it takes willpower to overcome the effects of the ego.
Right.
And even more willpower, Freddie, to know when the ego instead of the divine ego is directing your life. So willpower is how you discern.
So who you up against? Who is your opponent?
Yourself.
Absolutely, your lower self. It is your lower self. Let's break this down more. So, there's a lot of information we can cover, but this is a very important point. I think that listeners need to pay attention to. What is it that holds you back? You said it's yourself. Okay?
Definitely.
But what has informed you about yourself? Your home, your race, your community, your religion. Let me give you an example. You may consider yourself to be the dark sheep of the family. Mm-hmm. Okay? People have told you that okay, well, your brother got this, but you need to kind of like go slow. Or a school counselor tells you that really education or not for you. You may need to be a carpenter. There's nothing wrong with being a carpenter, but or work for a sanitation department. Or what if your religion tells you that you're born a sinner? You're not worthy. Think about the ways in which our lower selves have been indoctrinated with limiting beliefs. If you have diabetes or if you have cancer or whatever, you're gonna die. Energy flows where
attention goes. Right.
So if you spend most of your time on your limited possibilities, rather than developing your greater possibilities, guess what you're going to experience? The power of your own thought.
Yeah.
Limitations.
Now that's why it's so tough to break the wheel, because sometimes you find yourself going against your parents, your family, your community, and can you stand the pain of being considered the outside person?
So let's, before we wrap up, get into how you develop your will and how you overcome those lower.
Wow. What do you think you do? How do you develop it? Give me some wisdom.
Kelly suggests through meditation. The use of meditation.
Now you meditate.
To
Does
develop your will and willpower.
Does it help? That's what Kelly said. Tell me what your experience is.
Me personally, I know that what she's saying in here, meditation and having a practice that you consistently do, it helps you to have that will and that willpower over your lower levels of mind, and it also helps you to have the will to be able to do higher and greater things.
I like to define meditation as your higher self communicating with you, your lower self. Mm-hmm. But there's another part of this I would add too. She talks about questions.
Right.
To me, questions are like prayer. Now, you can ask too many questions that can cloud your mind, obviously, and mess up your development.
Right.
But there's types of questions that you can ask that actually opens up the journey. You know, and she talks about that. How, what questions are open questions.
Right.
You know, questions like, you know, yes or no questions, doesn't matter, yes or no, they don't do anything for you. You know, people say, well, how you know this? Doubtful questions. Close your mind off.
Mm-hmm.
But the question of, how can I open myself to higher possibilities? That's a question that calls you to go on a question, calls you to go on a journey. That to me is a form of prayer. Asking you shall receive, seeking you shall find, knocking the door should be open. What is the quality of the questions of your spiritual journey that lead you to the quest for knowing yourself? That to me is what it's about. Well, I guess we ought to stop here. Time's about out, right?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we'll pick up again with the next chapter. That'll be chapter, we call it 7, right?
Yeah.
So we'll pick up again on chapter 8 and 9. The power of thought and the power of words. That's going to be a good one.
Sure.
Look forward to seeing you, talking to you next week. Same time, same stations. See you, that's a Batman thing. See you guys next week. Have a great week.